So, guru devotion or relating to a guru is a very contentious topic because it's one of the two, maybe there's a third topic in spirituality that gets more exploited and abused than any other. So, I will be talking to it from the perspective of the Indian Tibetan cultures, but I will also be making references to our own culture where we've had the same accidents happen actually. So I didn't fully understand the concept of guru devotion until I lived in India, because our culture and our culture of meaning in life, of what it means to be an individual, of how I am with relation to everybody else around me is different. So, in brief, we are what's called an individualistic culture, whereas the Indian, Tibetan, and Asian cultures are very, very hierarchical. And the question is not who you are in a way that is detached from everybody else around you, but the question is who you live your life through, if I may phrase it that way. That means the question is, who do you completely surrender to and completely hand your life over to, right? So just to give you an example, when I was in India, I was there for 3 years, so I had various visas, and any official form for the Indian government that I had to fill out, I didn't just have to fill out who am I, like my name, birthplace, nationality, passport number, all the rest. Right after my name, I had to fill out who was my father, husband, or brother. In other words, it's like, through which man do I have a right to existence, right? And it's this idea of devotion in the family. It's like you completely hand your life over to your spouse and you're under that person, right? And when you're the child, you completely hand your life over to your parents. You're under your parents, right? If you're a woman, you know that at a certain point you'll be under your son. So you groom the son so that when your husband dies and the son takes over, the eldest son typically, in taking care of the mother, you're completely under your son. You know, it's like always this like a very servile attitude, like you are a servant, and the kind of servitude in these cultures. And it's not like we didn't have those. We also did. It's just 100, 200, 300 years ago, right? It's like your life, your actions, your thoughts, your preferences are owned by somebody and you are under them. But in exchange, they will completely take care of you, right? It's like, I give my life to you, but in exchange, it's suddenly now your job to make sure I have shelter, clothing, food, right? So it's a very interesting dynamic. And I didn't really understand what they talk about, this guru devotion, this kind of giving, handing yourself over, until I saw how it plays out in the culture at large, in it's like that you don't question the superiority and you don't question the orders. You can't. It's culturally not even permitted, right? So that really made me understand a lot more where this is actually coming from. And it's also like I completely hand myself over to you. I become your subject. I become like something that's owned by you. Therefore, I now partake of your glory. I suddenly bask in your glory. I'm a part of you, right? So in Buddhism, that is called that you as a students are a pore, like a pore of the skin of the guru, right? So if you think like, let's say the Dalai Lama is your official guru, that means all of his students, they're like the pores on the skin of his body, right? So the for us as neophytes, as converts, as transplants into a culture like that, that gives rise to a lot of problems. It also gives rise to a lot of problems with guru devotion, with abuse and corruption within traditional Asian cultures. I think the only difference is very simple. We go in blind, we deify this new glorious Indian culture, whereas the Asians know. They know it's corrupt. You just watch a bunch of Bollywood movies and you'll see how they paid off and corrupted the priesthood and things like that. It was no different in Tibet. It's like basically everything we know about the Catholic Church, take it one on one. I mean, it's like exactly true of all the Indian cultures, spiritual traditions, and Tibetan Buddhism, and anywhere else. Same for Zen Buddhism. It's the same attitude. The Zen warriors, the samurai, is like, I die for my castle. It's like, if I can only die for the greater glory of my warlord, I've fulfilled my life's purpose. So it's the same kind of an idea. And the problem is with the style of trust that is not really questioned, with us not questioning enough and lack of transparency. And this is actually not what the scriptures are saying. So the scriptures say things about guru devotion, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But then they don't say that we are supposed to be monolithic idiots, just not questioning anything henceforth. That's not what it means. That's not what the scriptures say. So it becomes a very, very hairy issue. So what I have noticed is that in the West, people have become so disenchanted with the corruption and sexual abuse and exploitation within the spiritual systems that they now hope that there's something much better to be found in Asia, and they project complete perfection and salvation onto those systems. That's cute and very naive. You should be choosing Buddhism over Christianity or Judaism or whatever, not based on naive projection, but based on philosophical tenets that you think are smarter and truer, right? So what also makes it even worse, this whole system, is that in Asian culture, you don't show your feelings. sorry, I just thought of another point. You don't show your feelings and you don't confront. That means you just always say yes, 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 yes in a very submissive way. You never say, why the heck should I be doing that? Right? It's just not part of the culture. And you don't confront, you also don't bring up issues or scandals, right? All scandals are hushed over. And it's also culturally a part of the world that's totally behind we're all women, what we want to cherish from our own culture, which is like equality of women, liberation, and all of those things, right? So then we think like, oh, Buddhism is so cool because of a bunch of philosophical things that I love about it. So now I take on Asian cultural model that I'm not questioning. And I'm going to start to, whenever I talk to my guru, not show any feelings, never question anything, not confront, and accept that women are the bottom of the shit pile, right? That's not what it says in the scriptures. These are just cultural, it's the icing on the cake that's culture, but not the meat of the philosophy or the spiritual teachings. And it's terrible. It makes a huge mess. And let me tell you, my dear sisters, when Western men come into these spiritual systems, they're delighted because they have to do nothing at all. And they're already in the upper 50% just by being male. And they get to poo-poo and look down on women. And it's even worse when it comes to ordination because you are, Western man, you decide to shave your head and wear a red dress. Man, you go up in status like boom. Suddenly it's like you are full of wisdom just by way of cutting a new haircut and a new dress, right? You're suddenly master of the wisdom. Let me kiss your feet. You do the same thing as a woman. New haircut, new dress, boom, you go down. You're bottom of the shit pile, and your guru tells you to go in the kitchen and do the dishes. And why do you need to study so much, right? And let me tell you, most men love it. Suddenly it's like, great, I can go to Buddhism class. I can finally look down on women the way I couldn't in my own culture, because in my own culture, it's not permissible. And the kind of stuff I have heard being in these cultures is really, being behind the scenes is really horrible. Like these Western monks who haven't exactly studied a whole lot in terms of Buddhism, saying things like, the nuns can teach bodhicitta, which is compassion. We'll teach emptiness, It's like, hey, wait a minute. Do you know the scriptures actually say that emptiness is female and bodhicitta is male? Never mind. So the nuns, they're so stupid, they can teach compassion, I'll teach a class on compassion because I'm just a woman. So, and then what's even worse, we women play along. We then go and worship the male. I just want to say, like, are you guys nuts? I should say, yeah, are you girls nuts? I was at a big teaching of His Holiness the Dalai Lama in France. It was at a huge arena that seated hundreds and hundreds of people. So he was up on stage with his Tibetan lamas. The whole stage, only men of all kinds of Buddhist traditions. They played in the interludes, in the break times, they played a slideshow on repetition cycle with hundreds of slides that was supposed to inspire you. Every single one of them showed a male who was supposed to be a holy being, right? Even, baby, newborn Rinpoches and everything like that. I mean, I got ready to puke. And I was standing in the toilet line for the women. I don't know what was being said, but I just couldn't hold my tongue when the women in front of me were like, oh, and I said like, yeah, every single of those slides shows a man, not a single one shows a woman. They almost choked me. It's like they can't bear the truth. They didn't want it to be true. Yes, but they're holy. Yeah, but they're only somehow representative of half of the planet. So, and like, are you saying that women can't get enlightened when all the scriptures say they do? I mean, it's unbelievable. So I'm mad at the system and I'm mad at Westerners because they go so gaga. They just take over all the bullshit. Can we please start to filter a little bit what we take on? It's like a long time ago, I was a dance teacher for different styles of dance, including African dance, and it's like, then you're supposed to feel honored. If you, as a Western woman, dance so well that the drummers will offer to drum for you, right? You can teach a workshop, the African men, they will come drum for you. But what it means is like you have to agree to sleep with them as well. It's like, so it's like the same bullshit over again. Can we just, I mean, I love African dance. I really loved it, but that was the point when I said, thanks, but no thanks. I think I'll stop my career as an African dance teacher right here. So, and that is a very important Buddhist category philosophically. It's called discriminating wisdom. Can you please use discriminating wisdom in this whole mess? And it's also so bad in the Zen tradition where you have this kind of militant obedience to orders, and when you get ordered around, you're supposed to be grateful because somebody gave you an order. So it's very, very difficult. So I really think that we need to take responsibility of how we are handling the culture clash. So there are two things. There is the spiritual philosophy of, say, judo Christianity, or whatever that word is in English, and then on the other side, Indo-Tibetan philosophical spiritual philosophies, and then there are the cultures. And there is a complete confusion that people think that because they like something about the philosophy, they have to take over the culture and the garbage and abusive aspects of the culture as well. So I'm teaching this class to tell you the good news that that's not based in scripture. Very honestly, I mean, I studied scriptures for 15 years, almost full-time, 3 years full-time in India at the Dalai Lama's college, full-time in Tibet. Never have I seen a single part where it says anybody that says anywhere in the scriptures that women should be treated like shit. There is denigration of women, but it never says anywhere treat them like shit or exploit them or anybody else sexually. Never, nowhere. So what the heck are we doing? And however, there are endless jokes culturally within the Tibetan culture joking about these abusive things happening. So they know it, of course they know it. I mean, like we have any guy with a bald head in a red dress come in an airplane from Asia, and we assume they must be like so steeped and like so knowledgeable, And I mean, you can get ordained, you just walk in, you're ordained, you look the part, and then people think you're so wise and start asking them questions. I mean, at a certain point, I had so much more knowledge and traditional training and knowledge in the scriptures than a lot of the Tibetan men, the ordained ones around me, and I saw how Westerners were treating me. I'm, of course, a piece of shit. I know nothing. And then them like, oh, I mean, it was so bad. Like, I mean, it's like believing that any man you meet in Germany is an expert on how to repair Mercedes-Benz because they're built in Germany. You know, I mean, I'm sorry to tell you that that's a very dangerous premise. You may ruin your car forever, you know. I'll tell you another story to really illustrate it. And there's a lot of corruption in the system, and there are a lot of Tibetan jokes about this corruption, including people quickly shaving their head and putting on monk's robes to pretend they're a lama, right? So it's not just, I mean, why the heck wouldn't it happen? If it comes with so much power, of course it's going to get abused and corrupted. So one story is like, this is a true story. Like we were in the Dharma Center in Bodh Gaya, and there was somebody painting the pillars in the temple with thick oil paint, right? The lady who was working for the center, she was from the US, treated him like he was an amazing artist, like the kind of artist that paints tankas. So that's how it came across to me, because that's how she, you know, made it come across. And I was helping to move some of the gold leaf statues with these very refined painted faces because of some cleaning and renovation work in the temple. And I saw that one Lamaji Tsongkhapa had a piece of, it was probably poop from a spider right on his face. So I said, oh, it should get fixed. And this lady, she's like, oh, the expert is right here, right? And she said to him, can you fix this? Now, you have to understand that doing the painting on a face is a highly specialized artistic training in and of itself. And it goes with certain rituals and stuff like that. And those statues they had gold leaf on them for the face, right? And the guy, he had a paintbrush with yellow oil paint, like the kind of paint you get on the pillars in the subway. And he said, like, sure, I can help. And he just went like douche and put a dab of yellow over it. And the lady said to me, isn't it great to have the experts right here? And I was like, this total idiot just completely desacralized, what is the word I'm looking for? That statue. And the woman on top of that is happy about his act of expertise. I mean, another friend of mine who had been living with the Tibetans, and she was a translator and speaking Tibetan, her and I, we looked at each other and said, like, man, I mean, the Westerners are such idiots. It's just absolutely unbelievable. And that guy even felt emboldened to do it. He was a Tibetan, right? But that proved how stupid he was. And most people also don't understand that most Tibetans don't have proper schooling. A lot of them don't know how to read and write. I was in a class at the college, and you keep on going up in classes whether or not you know any. I mean, there are exams at the end, but whether or not you even hand in your exam, you are promoted to the next class. You never get stuck or have to redo. You just go up like on a conveyor belt, you know. And I was in a class, I had gone to university and all of that. I was in a class with these monks who were, some of them were just starting to read and write. They were practicing the alphabet, right? And everybody was upset. Oh, you shouldn't be in this class. You know, you're going to corrupt them. They will want to get married and all of that to you. And I was like, they've never been told to clip their nails and wash their hands. Why would I, as a Western woman with an academic background, want to marry somebody who is, you know, at the age of 26 learning to read and write and doesn't know how to wash their hands? I mean, what an insult, you know. But I couldn't make that understood, because they're Tibetan males. Aren't they the most valuable thing you could hand your life over to, you know? And of course they wanted to get married to me because they could have gotten a visa to come to the West. You know, that was the valuable asset in the room, really. And they kept on asking Jimpa, does she know how to cook? Does she know how to knit? I'm like, I'm not going to go and knit sweaters for you now. I mean, seriously. So, I mean, this is just to give you an understanding of the kind of culture clashes, right? It's just really, really unbelievable. And we have to like shape up about it and not think just, and a lot of these guys who were in my class, they are now coming to the West and stepping in as Dharma teachers, as gurus, sorry. Right? So I was in class with those gurus. So, and it's like, yeah, some of them might even believe in Buddhism. How about checking first if they even believe in Buddhism? And it's not like we didn't have it in the Catholic Church. In case you don't know, in the Catholic Church, first son inherits the father's position, you know, farm, enterprise, noble title. Second son goes and becomes a monk or priest. Guess what? It's exactly the same in the Tibetan culture. First son inherits everything, second one goes to the monastery. It's not that they're running away from the Chinese over the mountains, over the Himalayas. That's treacherous. It's really dangerous. They land in India. They have nothing. They're refugees. The moment they enroll at a monastery, they're receiving free, they're getting a room with a bed, they're getting clothing, free food, free education, and they don't have to do anything for the education. They just have to sit in the class and do nothing. It's actually a kind of social service. It's a refugee. The monasteries are refugee camps. The Dalai, you don't know this because he doesn't say that to the Western audiences. But I was there listening to what he said to the Tibetan audience. He kept on saying, there are way too many monks. This isn't serious. How about half of you disrobe and start, you know, like working because you don't even believe in Buddhism? What the heck are you doing there being monks? How about that? So, so there's been such problems with guru devotion that the Dalai Lama has come over the decades to the point where he says that teaching point should be dropped. Wow. So the way traditionally Buddhism is dropped is that first they tell glorious stories about previous great practitioners, like real holy people, and it's whether or not embellished, it's very inspiring. And also about the glory of the lineage, like what these spiritual teachings can do for you. And the next topic is guru devotion. Therefore, devote yourself to a guru. The Dalai Lama, from his experience from the 60s up to now, of seeing what has happened because of the interaction between Asian men, there's the odd woman, but I mean, it's not even 1%. So Asian men as gurus, the teachings and a Western audience is so bad that he said we should drop it. We should no longer teach it as something that you're supposed to do. That is kind of sad, but it's the grim reality. The reason why I'm giving you this grim reality talk is because it can make it so that when you correctly devote, these accidents don't happen. So what the Tibetan Buddhist literature actually says, they say, spend a lot of time checking out gurus. You know, like really look around, sample around. When you think you found someone who's good, and there's a list of qualities somebody who qualifies as a guru is supposed to meet, spend 10 years checking them if they really have these qualities. Qualities are like true wisdom, true patience. If they walk their talk, they don't just talk about morality, they also live in morality and keep their morality and all of those things, right? So you're supposed to spend 10 years. So in all the Lamrim books that are still out, the stages of the path, in the chapter on Guru devotion, you can read that up. Nobody does that. It's more like, oh, my girlfriend said this great Lama's coming to town. Let's just rush and throw ourselves at his feet. And you know, intelligent women. I had one of my Dharma sisters, super, super, super intelligent. She had 2 PhDs in something like electrical engineering and machine design or robotics or something like that. She's one of these people who are actually designing our future. So she went to one of those lamas and she was like charmed or mesmerized and whatnot. And she went to make an offering to him and said to him, seriously, she said to him, like, do we have special karma together? And he said, sure. She took that to mean, out of all the women in the planet, you're my soulmate. And they went on to have a hidden relationship. He totally sexually exploited her. And when I said to her, she told me at a certain point, you know, and because she knew I was a psychotherapist, and maybe it was unkind, I don't know, but it shows you the degree of brainwashing. When I said to her, like, honey, all Tibetans know, including all Tibetan women know, that great lamas have sexual affairs right, left, and center. And they tolerate it. How come that, oh, one of the reasons why she was so shocked and heartbroken was when she found out that she was just one in a huge series of, you know, that she wasn't the one. I said, how come you, as such a super intelligent woman, miss that point? She never talked to me again. So it's like we are also not allowed to, I mean, discriminating wisdom. When I see these things in the system and people acting like they're not brainwashed, but brain amputated, I'm not even allowed to mirror that back to them. Then I'm the bad one. Oh, you don't have devotion. It's like, hardly so. So the point is that you're asked by the literature to check for 10 years for the real qualities. And what does that mean? That means it's the opposite of blind faith. And I feel that a lot of people are so disenchanted with their childhoods, with their experience in our culture, with the spiritual experience in our churches and stuff. They're dying to have blind faith. My message is go right ahead. Just don't blame me for all the accidents. It's like wanting to walk across a 6-lane highway blindly. Yeah, just close your eyes and walk across in blind faith. Good idea, you know? So, and the whole point is we're not asked by the scriptures in neither in choosing the guru nor in devoting to the guru. We are clearly not asked to abdicate intelligence. But that's what everybody does, right? So, I mean, one of the things that drove this home to me more than anything else, and it's not like I got it right from the beginning, because I was, the way I met the Dharma, the older students, also role model for me, this complete blind, you don't ask questions, and the more you just, you know, lower yourself and switch off discriminating wisdom, the more enlightened you'll get. So in comes Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche. He was an extremely brilliant master who was extremely abusive also in many ways, but he made me understand something. So there is this story that's always told to illustrate the most amazing story of Guru devotion in all of ancient history, which is between the Pandit, which we can say university scholar Naropa, and the yogi Tilopa. The yogi who had siddhis, who had magical powers, Tilopa. And Naropa, at a certain point, I'm going to make it short, he quits his job as a university professor of sorts and goes out to find the yogi Tilopa to apprentice with him, to learn real wisdom. And there are all these things where Tilopa says to him things like, they're up on a high building, and he just says to him, jump, and he just jumps down and like basically breaks all of his bones and almost dies. And Tilopa comes down and says like, what the heck are you doing? And then because he has magical powers, he heals him back, and then, but time after time, Tilopa asks him to do these crazy things, and he just doesn't even question it because he's been told by the scriptures, you don't question, you just do what your guru says. And he does it, and he almost kills himself. And the way it came across to me by the Western students is like to say, isn't this amazing if we could all be like Naropa and just jump off Rockefeller Center and smash dead at the bottom because our guru said we would be enlightened on the spot. Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche, one of the highest Rinpoche from within the Tibetan culture, raised within that culture, he said, Naropa was such a bloody idiot. He was so intellectual that he didn't understand at all. All he understood was to blindly follow instructions, and he kept on almost killing himself, and poor Tilopa kept on having to revive him. It's like, hey, wait a minute, you somehow have the opposite take on the whole story and what it's supposed to mean than how the Western people interpret it to me. So he said Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche said that kind of blindly following the instructions means that you are totally not yogic and that you're completely like narrow-minded intellectual and have no real wisdom. I was like, oh, that's interesting. There is a place for trust and following crazy seeming instructions. There is this thing called crazy wisdom, which is the highest and most advanced part of the path. And you're supposed to first be more conventional, such as really check around, find somebody who seems at least, keep morality, keep their vows, keep their word, have real wisdom, be further along than you on the path. And, to build up to the point where you have enough spiritual realization that if you follow the model of so-called crazy wisdom, that you are not getting yourself into a wild and abusive situation, that you can handle it and really transform it into wisdom and enlightenment. So in the Tibetan style, you're supposed to go and check Tibetan Buddhism out and the Lama like you go to a lecture. You're just checking, you're listening, saying like, do I even like Buddhism? Does it make sense to me? Does it suit me? And then in Tibet also there was a much more realistic approach than here, because they were stuck in faraway villages scattered amongst the Tibetan plateau. So you couldn't do this tremendous lama hopping, and it's like the worst in New York City because all the great names come through there to cash in on the offerings. So for the most part, people were stuck in a small village that had like a village lama, that's somebody like your piano teacher. They're not Vladimir Horowitz, the greatest pianist of the century. It's just an ordinary person playing the piano better than you, right? So most people in Tibet were relating to very ordinary people who were a little bit more knowledgeable and a little bit more ahead on the path than themselves. And most of their learning and practicing happened in that village lama relationship. And then should a great lama, because they would go on tour, right? The great lamas were touring because they needed to raise money. It was like a concert tour. They needed to make a lot of money for the monastery so the monastery could live, right? So if a great lama would come, then they would go and have more of a distanced, illusory type of relationship to that lama, because you don't get to speak to that person. It's just like far up there. And this is like no video screens, no microphones, lama at the horizon, so tiny you can't see them. Maybe you won't hear what's being said. You're just sitting there like hoping you get the blessing, and then that becomes a different kind of a lama. It may even be your so-called root lama, the chief lama, but it's more like an illusion because you don't actually have a relationship with them. There's no real human interaction. And for the most part, you pass through some kind of secretary or office to make your offering. And so most Tibetan people had, their village lama where the real thing happened, and then some big name lama. I mean, they didn't have photographs, so they couldn't have photographs on their altar, somehow just working with that image, right? And or some people would save it for once in their lifetime to make the very long and arduous journey to Lhasa, the capital. It would often take like 2 months in a caravan crossing various high mountain paths. I meant to say, yeah, you say mountain paths, right? Paths. I speak too many languages. I sometimes don't know which word is in which language anymore, right? And so it could take 2-3 months to get to Lhasa, try to get there for the Great Prayer Festival, to receive once in a lifetime an initiation from the Dalai Lama, right? And then you go back home, and maybe there's also teachings about what you got the initiation in. So Lara and you were just not there. So by the Dalai Lama in faraway Lhasa, then you journey back home for another 2 months or so, and for the rest of your life, again, you're in the village with a small lama who helps you actually practice. So that was really the model. And I really like that model of having this one person like your piano teacher who really helps you with the day-to-day, with the nitty-gritty, to really understand, to always deepen things a little bit more, a little bit more. In the Tibetan style, you are allowed to disagree. You're allowed to say no to your lama. Now, it's an Asian culture, so saying no is not like in Germany. That's very German. No. So Jimpa calls it the German no. So it's more like Caribbean style. You say yes, but then you don't do it, Or like I've heard one story where a monk knew that his chief lama wouldn't allow him to do a certain thing, but he also knew he had asthma. So he went in the very early mornings, woke him up, And while the Lama was coughing and wheezing like every morning upon waking up, he said, Lama, can I do X, Y, Z? But the Lama was just coughing and he quickly left without waiting to get the real answer. So that way he didn't have to disobey. You know, I'm just trying to show you that the Asians, they figured out a way of disobeying without saying, you know what, I'm not going to do this, you know. But there is a way of respectfully disagreeing, or you can just say, I can't. You know, it's just they did it Asian style, but I don't think we have to become Asians. I mean, when I was also in Nepal and in India, I mean, everybody is like the women all running around with a chuba, that's a Tibetan dress, and drinking Tibetan butter tea and stuff. I mean, I just couldn't make myself buy a chuba because I'm like, how's that going to help me? And why are people checking if I wear a chuba and not if I can clearly visualize Shakyamuni Buddha in space in front of me? You know, which of the two is actually more important? So that's also the materialistic aspect of the Dharma, which in nature and by its tenets is completely not materialistic. But that's not how humans live it. So you can say no. If your Lama says jump, you can say, I hear what you're saying. It might be the wisest thing for me to do, but you know what? I'm scared. I'm not going to do it, you know? So you can, the whole point is that you're supposed to have a sounding board and create a field of resonance between you and your enlightened aspect and part, right? So it's actually Tibetan Buddhism works a lot with visualization. In visualization, you will never understand it until you understand that it's actually a dance of projection. So you're entering a projective dance, and that person is basically the silver screen on which you project your own highest, wisest, and most enlightened part. And hopefully they will not betray you and abuse you and put you down. And the problem is also to understand guru, because people always think guru is the outer guru, right? A person in flesh I can go make offerings to and you know, venerate and get answers from and all the rest. But actually in the teachings, the guru is threefold. There's the outer, inner, and secret guru. We'll get into that. Not only that you felt of emptiness, it's not like everything is empty, but the guru's not. It's not like that. Everything is empty means everything is empty, means the guru is empty. Empty of what? Of inherent existence, means by definition does not exist out there solidly the way he or she appears. So now all inner abandoned children would start kicking, screaming, throwing tantrums, saying, but I wanted an idea about daddy solidly out there, reliable, blah, 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 blah. So if you have mommy and daddy issues, please go seek out therapy, because if you try to solve that with a guru in a spiritual relationship, it's going to be nasty. You're going to get so hurt, you're going to get re-traumatized. If you're lucky, you're only going to get hurt and re-traumatized. If you're unlucky, you're going to get terribly abused. Either, for the most part, either financially, or the typical two big ones are financially and sexually. Sometimes also people have been beaten, there was just this terrible, terrible documentary a year ago that you can't see because you're this other geopolitical region for YouTube videos or whatnot. But it was a documentary that came out here in Europe in English, German, and French called La Loi du Silence. In French, I only remember in French that because it was reporting about France, about the abuse that happened in French Dharma centers, which included taking children away from their parents, their Western parents, who were dumb enough to hand over their children. The children were starved, abused, the girls sexually abused. And there was also another Dharma center where people had all their money taken away. They were completely brainwashed. They were beaten, sexually abused. I mean, I was so shocked. Like, I was walking around like a zombie for a couple of days after seeing that. And it's like, people, I'm not trying to blame the victim, right? But I'm like, how can we, as educated Westerners, who we are supposed to be in the driver's seat in this relationship, we have the education, we have the money, this is our country, and the laws on our side. What the heck is wrong that we allow these things to happen to us? And one problem is truly that I believe is that Buddhism and that whole guru devotion model specifically attracts highly traumatized people who are more gullible and vulnerable to these kinds of abuse structures. And that people who had very good, responsible parents who gave them love and confidence, they would just go like, I like Buddhism, but this whole kind of like dance weird thing at the center, at the Buddhist center, it's not for me. I'll just, do my own thing at home. So I know that from having lived in a New Age community for 2 years, where it was known that highly traumatized and vulnerable people were flocking there because of that dynamic. So it was people would literally show up and say, you're talking about love and light, so therefore I'll just sit here now in the community center, eat for free, and you must host me and heal me and take care of me like a baby because you're talking about love and light, period. It's like, no, we're going to call the police and evict you because this is private property, So there's a lot of this also happening. And so my demand to my Western Dharma brothers and sisters is grow up. You want to be a Buddhist, you have to grow up. I talked about this before. You want to be a child, you want to be God's baby, be a Christian. He's dead. Buddha's not dead. He never said that. You need a daddy, you need to be Christian, or I don't know about Judaism, some other religion. In Buddhism, they need you to be a grown-up. You can't be a grown-up. The philosophy is not for you. So, last point is, in the Tibetan style of relating to the guru, if you grow disenchanted about your teacher, you may distance yourself. So there's always these tenets in guru devotion that make people feel like once a guru, you can never get out. Like it's like, like you're stuck to the guru with super glue or something like that. It's not like that. It's just an Asian style. You don't throw a fit. You don't tell everybody that he burps and that stinks, so you don't want him as a guru anymore. You're like disrespectful without making a fuss. You just fade away. That's Asian style. But you are allowed to end a relationship, and you're just asked for your own good to not trash that person. So how does that fit with discriminating wisdom? It's like, and I've been in very, very bad situations myself where things went incredibly wrong. with regards to that, then the best thing is to say, whatever I learned that was good from this person, and all the good moments, I'll keep them as the good package. So that's my good memory package of that spiritual teacher. And the bad ones, I acknowledge them. I don't need to run around and write op-eds about it. I acknowledge it, and therefore I pull out and I leave it like that. That's that style. At the same time, I'm now very grateful that people do step forwards and talk about these incredible abusive things that happened, right? So I do not agree that you should allow, children to be taken away from parents under the guise of spiritual education and then starved and sexually abused. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's like absolutely not what I'm saying. You should make a fuss. You should call in the TV teams. You should, confront everybody, and absolutely you should make a court case and have those people arrested. And the problem in Europe is, so these people, there are now arrest warrants for them in France, but they just live in Portugal. So that's one of the problems we're having here. So the misunderstanding comes from the sentence in the scripture is, even somebody who teaches you one syllable or one shloka, which means one line in a verse format, teaching, is your guru. You have to understand that guru to us sounds bombastic, like, wow. Guru translated into Tibetan means lama. So guru in Sanskrit, guru, somehow the root of the word means he or she who is heavy with weight of wisdom. So the way they translated that into Tibetan Lama means the person who is higher on the path of enlightenment and in wisdom. And the problem is, like, this sloka to us sounds like the person who teaches me just even the alphabet, it says, because the alphabet is in the form of syllables. It's a syllable alphabet, is my guru for the rest of my life. But it sounds to us like, guru. I mean, no, it means that person taught me knowledge that's precious, and I respect them for the rest of my life for that. If now they go around stealing everything from everybody else, you're not supposed to respect them for that, right? So you have to understand this comes from a culture and a time when very few people were literate and very few people had education. So of course that was super, super, super precious. Now kids have to get up, 7 o'clock in the mornings in the dark in a blizzard, and they have to go to school on a cold, drafty bus, and they have to sit there and do all this boring stuff for years and years and years and years without being able to run and jump and, swing in the trees. And so our relationship and our culture to education is very different now. So I think what we have to understand is that, so like, supposedly, according to the scripture, I'm your guru now, but it means teacher of, like, I taught you whatever it is that I'm teaching now. That doesn't mean like I get to run your life now, or I get to tell you to jump off of Rockefeller Center. That's not what it means. I think it means really that you're supposed to be feeling so happy that so happy to learn, and that there's precious knowledge, and that you're supposed to respect me just for that. Like they say, you respect your mother the mother who gave birth to you, just for that, just for the fact that she had you in your belly for 9 months, she gave birth, and there was a lot of trouble to her and her body and her health. So after that, she may be the craziest, most dysfunctional, horrible, destructive person in your life. That is what that is, but you can still appreciate the fact that she had you in her belly for 9 months, no matter what, right? And she didn't kill you. That's what they say. It's like she still gave you your life. For 9 months, she could have killed you. There's also this thing of infanticide, a way of suffocating the newborn in a way that it doesn't really show. It's like, oh, it just died. Baby died after birth. Happens. So not only did she have you in her belly for 9 months without killing you, she also didn't suffocate you right after you were born. You made it, you're here. That's something to be grateful for, It doesn't mean you have to think everything is great. You don't have to like my hair, my style of clothing, or my political views just because I'm saying something about the Dharma now, and you're allowed to be here and also listen to whatever I'm saying like it's a university lecture. You don't have to take me on as a guru. I think when you really look at what the scriptures are saying, don't trash. If there are things that I'm saying that are true and truthful in a more ultimate way, don't trash me for that. Like if you want to trash me, at least separate that out and say, well, she did say a bunch of things that were nice. The rest of her is garbage. And I want to distance myself. That's not very Asian. They wouldn't trash me. They would just, say, I like somebody else better. So another thing that I've seen in the West is that culture is very materialistic. People go to a spiritual teaching. The spiritual teaching is wonderful. Spiritual opening happens. There's a certain merging into oneness with the person teaching, who's always a man, basically. And then there is a confusion with a spiritual opening and a sexual opening and merging. So people fall in love with a guy on the throne who's very happy to take sexual favors from whoever's in the room, for the most part. Not always. And there are certain lamas, and I mean, by now we have to say, like, God, I mean, we can be so grateful that there are certain people like the present Dalai Lama, you've never heard a scandal, It's like to say, thank God. Oh my God, we've had one of these amazing guys with all the power in the world to do every single thing wrong sexually, but he hasn't. It's like, can't we be grateful for that? It's like there are just too many of these stories. Or like for instance, there's one of the lamas who's now no longer teaching, one of the highest Tibetan lamas who's been in Germany for decades. But he was married with children. He was changing diapers, It was like, I was like, that feels good, It's like, how about that, So it's also up to us to make our choices of who we want to move our minds, and whether or not we want to project the spiritual opening that happens out and say, oh, it must come from that person, and that person gives me the feeling of saying it's an interdependent arising. It's like that person does something, but this feeling of spiritual opening is actually something that happens inside of me. It's my feeling. So I should be able to feel it again. That's the whole point of where you're supposed to go home and sit on your meditation cushion, to enter that kind of a feeling again. So the guru, there's the outer, inner, and secret guru. The outer guru is the person in flesh, the teacher who sits in front of you. The inner guru is the kind of your inner voice, your own inner wisdom, where you are guiding yourself with spiritual guidance. And then the secret guru is basically that's a higher, more mystical concept, but basically the energy, the flow of energy inside you that's related to wisdom and enlightenment, that is understood as being empty at the same time. So the main point is that most people, they, have never had a good mother or father they could get attached to. So they think, oh, finally, I'm finding a guru and I can be attached to them for the rest of my life. That's also not the point. The point is that the guru, on the outer guru, is just a basis, an outer basis that helps you enter the dance, the projective dance within your psyche between your mind and the inner guru, your own inner aspect of yourself that is the guru and the wisdom. And you're supposed to nurture that rather than be in bed with some Tibetan guy who should be celibate, Sorry, I'm saying that. Okay, the reason why I'm bringing this up all the time is like I was in India, right? Surrounded by other Western women who lived there. To the best of my knowledge, I'm the only one who didn't have sex with any of these Rinpoches and stuff like that, And it played out really bad for me because I never made it in the hierarchy, So that's why but I helped them, like hush up the pregnancies and carry the luggage when they had to leave India to go back to their respective countries giving birth, and listen like 3,000 hours unpaid psychotherapy, them crying over being trashed for it was only a girl, you can't even give birth to a boy. I mean, so you can't even imagine. So I'm just going to say to you what a friend of mine said, who is an Indian doctor and Ayurvedic doctor, medical doctor and Ayurvedic doctor. He was like quite crass at a certain point. He said, most Westerners seem to think that you can become an Ayurvedic doctor by sleeping with a Vidya. That's the title they give to an Ayurvedic doctor, because it's the same. It's like the Ayurvedic doctors come from India here. People like skip the aspect of studying Ayurvedic scriptures and the herbs with them and go to bed with them, because then suddenly they gain status of being almost like the Vidya, like sexual partner of Vidya. And it's like, I've just seen it play out so many times. And I mean, after you have to say to your friend who has the newborn in the arms, saying like, look, if he's violent, I don't care if he's a Rinpoche, you call the police now. It's like, could we please wake up? So, and that particular person I told her to call the police on was featured in some beautiful Buddhist article, like about 4 weeks later, blessing babies, and everybody is so happy that he's blessing babies. And I'm like, yeah, you almost smashed your own newborn. This makes great sense, So stop being so naive. It like really gets on my nerves, as you may figure. So see, it's the same. We know all of that from the Hollywood stars. Stardom doesn't do well with human beings. Just spend the rest of today's Saturday, watch 10 documentaries on 10 lives of 10 great Hollywood movie stars, and you'll figure out they all had somehow bad secrets to hide and weren't what they seem to be. So then, of course, we all bring our neurotic styles into Tibetan Buddhism and practice. And you can really see that play out very strongly. And you have to understand that you're entering Buddhism to dismantle your ego, right? The whole point of being a Buddhist is to dismantle your ego. So in walk all the Westerners who've grown up in a culture that really beefs up ego, thinking, oh, great, this sounds like great fun to have even more of an ego. So, and then that doesn't go down so well. So one of the neurotic styles is projecting paradise. Everything is so great. Buddhism is so great. The lamas are so great. The Sangha is so great, and for these people, I can only hope that they stay far away enough that they never find out that that doesn't age well. It's incredibly naive, of course. So a big one I already mentioned is that you're looking for the perfect parent you never had, or you're looking for the loving family amongst the Dharma siblings you never had. Let me tell you, there is, because of limited access to the great prize, which in this case is not mommy or daddy's love, it's the guru's attention. Jealousy is so rampant in Dharma centers. It is horrible, really horrible. So if you have a family background where jealousy amongst the siblings was an issue, you're going to suffer in the Dharma centers. I can promise you that. And I recommend a lot of good therapy. Codependence is a very big one because the Tibetans have gotten kicked out of the Dharma their country. They're refugees, they're poor. And it's the only religion that's a world religion where you're not learning with a clergy or structure from your own country, from your own economic system, and where you as the audience need to finance half a people scattered over India in refugee camps and finance to rebuild their life there, from which you will not profit. Do you understand what I just said? It's like saying, oh, I am a Christian here in Germany, but the place I'm going is just there to make me donate enough money so that, let me pick some other country, let me pick New York State, so that the Christian church in New York State can support millions of people, loads of them full-time monks and nuns, to rebuild houses, ginormous temples, Dharma centers, and all of that. That's the purpose of me going to church here, is to make that happen. Do you understand that? Because I didn't for the longest time. It took me so long to figure that out. So a sarcastic person once said, the Tibetan Buddhists only have two things to sell in the world market: Tibetan carpets and the Dharma. This is factually not correct. There's three things to sell in the world market as of now, which is Tibetan carpets, Tibetan medicine, and the Dharma. Because now I'm an herbalist, right? I go around and teach in the US at different herb schools, and but it's the same. It's like I teach a class, it's like, oh, great class. But then in come the Tibetan doctors, they say, oh, while we make the pills, we recite the medicine Buddha mantra. And then everyone's like, whoa, and it's like, I'm like, yeah, it's amazing. It's a very, very interesting phenomenon that really speaks to how spiritually lost we've gotten. That we don't understand that whatever prayer we could make up, or we've learned in our upbringing can also be powerful and bless a medicine. You know, like example is Lourdes, that holy place for the Catholics, where, you know, there's this one place people touch it and they can walk again. You know, they were in a wheelchair and they walk home. So it's not like this is something owned by Tibetan Buddhism. You know, sorry, I may not sound like it, but actually I really love the Dharma, not the cultural shit. I really love the Dharma. And it's good to make the difference. So, let me jump over some of it. So one thing that also the Buddhist scriptures talk about, and I see that play out a lot right now. So I think this started maybe 12 years ago, that what used to be yoga classes became the yoga industry 12 to 15 years ago. You may remember that when suddenly there was yoga fashion, and every year you needed a different kind of yoga outfit, yoga mat, and kind of like little thing to take your drink to yoga class, like with a 1,000-petal lotus or this or that, and a cork or wooden top. Or anyhow, I was just absolutely amazed, because I'd be at the end of the world in rural France, coming to New York once a year, and it just seemed so materialistic and ridiculous, because yoga is how you stretch on the inside of your body. That's materialistic, but actually it only happens depending on how you stretch and move your energy, and not what it's on your body. I mean, you can be wearing a potato bag. It's like it doesn't have anything to do with it. So in that same, or with a certain time delay, Buddhist classes became the Dharma industry. And that relates to the saying in the scriptures of saying, in relating to the guru. This talking about the mistakes on the part of the student relating to the guru is, you're not supposed to stalk the guru like a musk deer. Musk deers is a kind of a deer that lives in Tibet, and they have, like, in the anal region, certain kind of glands, small glands that have a highly praised aromatic substance in them called musk, that is amongst the most expensive things in the world for perfume making, perfumery, even from ancient times. The smell of musk, you may have heard that, a musky smell, right? So stalking the musk deer means you stalk the deer, and your sole intention is to kill it, cut out these tiny glands, and leave the carcass to rot. Stalking the guru like a musk deer means you have no regards for the guru as a human being, their life, or their circumstances. You have no regards for the teaching setup, anything like that. You don't even have true regard for the Dharma. All you see is that guru possesses one piece of wisdom I want, and I'm going to stalk him, kill him, rip out that piece of wisdom, leave the carcass to rot. So now I can possess that wisdom. And that plays out so badly in the scene right now. I mean, not just in Buddhism, also in other areas, but it's like when Jimpa and I came out of retreat, the scene began to be rampant, and people would just listen to us say things and literally say like, oh, I'm going to teach that in my next class. It's like, huh? I mean, people based chapters in their books on remarks Jimpa or I did at a dinner table, because it showed this much more or some new degree or angle on the understanding of the Dharma. And then it's like the proper attitude is to then say, wow, that's amazing. You must understand something I didn't. So let me listen more, deeper, to have it resonate inside of me, to be transformed, and to be grateful back that you took me another step of the way, not without really listening and digesting, just take those words, rip them out of context, and materialistically make them my next online gig and Facebook post and stuff like that, which is why I'm refusing to have my teachings posted, because I do know, actually, I know the names of the people who will watch them to turn around and teach what I just said. I'm not saying that because somebody else said it. It's because it's my life's experience. So the way I'm teaching the Dharma is there are two ways. It's like you can say, scripture says, wah, wah, wah. So I'm telling you, scripture says, wah, wah, wah. That's called a scriptural teaching. And then there's the so-called experiential teaching, which is where you're teaching from your experience and understanding that you have sweated for. And I know that the world is full of people who want to take what I'm saying because it sounds new. You can't find it in a book because it's my experience. And they want to make loads of money in the Dharma industry using my words. And I hate that. So this is stalking the guru like the musk deer. Rampant right now. Really rampant. So that's in the scriptures, wrong way of relating to a Dharma teacher. So then next one is you're trying to be the good boy or good girl, and you hope that by being the good boy or the good girl, the guru is going to notice you, that you're being a good boy or girl, and praise you. Most likely not going to happen, because that's not what they need. The Tibetan gurus need people who do all the work for free and who donate a lot of money. The one thing they don't need at the center is people who practice well. That's not what centers are about. The centers are there as a machinery to raise funds to funnel back to India to support the Tibetan community. You just have to understand that. So, for instance, there's an inherent conflict. The Dharma Center wants to make money, as much money for as little service. The true practitioners want the service to give as much service for as little money as possible. So not very compatible. Then there's this tremendous rush, the competition for wanting to possess the guru. So there's always like the inner circle springing up that elbows everybody else out, and then suddenly, before you know it, this happened to me so many times, where people I did so much for and tried to include in special classes that were given to me, then won't tell me when they have a special class. You get excluded. It's like really nasty competition around special events and special time with the guru. That comes from, I don't know if I said that before, but it's like because it's a model of scarcity that didn't happen in Tibet. The village guru was always there. You didn't have unlimited access because he may be busy feeding his cattle or harvesting the crops in his field, right? It was a rural culture. But you just have to wait until he has a moment, and then you can spend time. We have these allotted 5 seconds here and there of time with the guru, and it creates a scarcity model. So everybody's fighting over a very scarce commodity, and it creates a lot of problems. And that's not in the scriptures. It doesn't say anywhere, be a guru, but making yourself as scarce as possible and have everybody fight over your attention. It doesn't say that anywhere. Yeah, and then there's this, like, for instance, this pattern you see quite a bit is serving only the guru. You're supposed to serve all sentient beings. So these Dharma practitioners who serve only the guru while walking over dead bodies of everybody right, left, and center, it's like they don't care whoever else is harmed as long as they serve the guru. This is also totally not scriptural, not Buddhist, totally misunderstood and completely neurotic. So these are just a few styles off the top of my head. So the Asians and Tibetans really don't understand psychotherapy. They're not going to appreciate it. The few who do really do. So, for instance, Thich Nhat Hanh, the very great Zen Buddhist Master Thich Nhat Hanh, who was such a gentle soul and a real true bodhisattva. In some of his last books, they are basically pure psychotherapy front to back. My criticism in that is like, could you please honor your sources? I've seen entire books, like, for instance, I'm a Gestalt psychotherapist. One of the books, I saw an entire book, first to last page, Gestalt Psychotherapy Method 101. Cover says, ancient Tibetan wisdom, just like in one page in the front, it says like, the lady who wrote it, like, she also did psychotherapy and found it helpful. That's plagiarism. That's really bad, Even according to Buddhism, you're supposed to name your sources. In the scriptures, you always honor your sources. So there's also like a really weird kind of cultural, what's the word I'm looking for? When you take things from another culture.
Appropriate?
Appropriation, yes, thank you. It's like the weirdest cultural appropriation going on, where now Tibetan Buddhist lamas, Tibetan and Western style, culturally appropriate all the good of psychotherapy and sell it as a Dharma. And I'm just like, ah. And when I was a young Dharma student, I was literally told that I'm corrupting everybody by being a psychotherapist because I'm making everybody angry. Seriously, you're a bad Buddhist because you're a psychotherapist, you're making everybody angry. And now that's ancient Tibetan wisdom. It's like, wow, how did that happen? It only took 20 years, flop, So we're living in interesting times. So we're living technically in the era of the degenerate times. And one of the things here is that fakeness parades as wisdom. That's basically what I'm talking about the whole time. It's in the scriptures. So the scriptures also say that another mistake we're doing in relating to the guru is that we love our own mistakes and our teachers. So, for instance, Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who was a very controversial figure, he was truly a genius also and a complete alcoholic. And he made all of his students drink alcohol in a very amazingly skillful way that was still bouncing mistakes off of one another. So people who love to drink love to have him as as their guru, because they said, well, he drinks, I can drink. And he loved it when his students drank, because he was drinking, then he didn't look like he was the only alcoholic in town. So the scripture clearly says, don't do that. So you think Chögyam Trungpa is amazing. You want to devote yourself and follow and study with a lama who is an alcoholic. Fine. They say, don't take on his mistakes. Don't start drinking because he drinks. What do you need for that? You need discriminating wisdom, right? So don't, or like, you can't stop eating too much sugar. Your Lama has a sweet tooth and is overweight. Ooh, that has nothing to do with enlightenment. It's just a personality trait and not exactly a strength, right? So just have the honesty, the integrity to say to yourself, like, that's my weakness, that's also that person's weakness, and it has nothing to do with the Dharma. So there is so many ways in which we get entangled. So one of the ways in which people get entangled is confusing love with money or money with love. That's a big one. All psychotherapists know about that. Most family systems confuse love and money. It's like, well, my parents must love me because they give me so much money. Or my husband must love me because he gives me so much money. Money is money and love is love. And the Tibetan system lends itself to that because they've always had to see, we had church tax, we still have it. If you say that you're a Protestant, then at tax times every year they take out X amount of church tax out of your income, right? Here in Germany. So we've had this for a long time settled here in our culture. I have heard a story that a very long time ago, probably in the Middle Ages, they wanted to try this and say, okay, it's been based on voluntary donations. I'm going to skip that story. I don't have time. Anyhow, so the point is that the more you donate, the more attention you will get from the guru, and the guru is the rare source, right? If you give a big donation, you'll have special access to the guru. You'll suddenly be invited for dinner. And that is understandable. It's not in the scriptures. You're not supposed to butter up the sponsors, but everybody does it. And if you don't, you make so little money that it doesn't make sense for you to even teach the Dharma. That's the end of, that's the bottom line. If you don't butter up people and talk them into donating, it's like, it's a losing system. And so because you're getting the reward when you do a big donation, people want to give big donations to, suddenly be the favorite child in the family system and get some extra patting on the head. And it increases that whole competitive, nasty jealousy problem. And most of all, it's also it's not true appreciation. It's not that the Lama truly appreciates you or even knows or notices who you are just because you gave 10,000. And I remember that one time somebody sent Jimpa and I to who they thought was like the best, most guru, rarest, this and that Lama in Nepal, and paid for us to fly there and visit, and had given that person donations of 10,000, maybe more than once. And, that person's private Western woman came with her Jeep from the Nepali mountain to the airport to pick us up, bring us to that Lama. And, we spoke Tibetan. So we're sitting in front of him and we are like, well, XYZ sent us. And he just said to his attendant, who? Who's that? Had no memory of the name whatsoever. It's like, it's, and we were both saying like, okay, we're not going to tell that to that person because it'll break their heart. They need the illusion to think that they are so special now within the system and that they've been noticed. So that's another thing, is like, if I really like the village Lama thing, and where it's real, it's somebody who is in town, you go see them on a regular basis, you have a normal human relationship with them, then these shenanigans fall away and the relationship is a real human relationship, and it's just much more healthy. And then, we get entangled with top dog, underdog dynamics, with sexual energy, with slaving away at the Dharma Center, often, with a living for the promise, like, oh, if you only edit 10 more books for free, then, whatever the kickback is, rather than saying like, no, we're making money at the Dharma Center. Why can't the people who work here be paid at least minimum wage, Which I worked at a Dharma Center a long time ago. It's not that long ago. I think it's 25 years ago. And at that point, as you may remember, minimum wage in the United States was $4.50. There was no way. I mean, none of us could survive. I mean, you could literally not eat on $4.50 an hour. So what is so spiritual about that? About enslaving the people who help in the Dharma Center? Why do we want to create systems where people are so exploited, they don't have health insurance, they just work until they fall over dead and then somebody else takes their place? That's the reality of in the Dharma centers, quite frankly. So then, yeah, I this authoritarian kind of hierarchy where the guru is actually an autocrat and a dictator, the way it came over from Asia into our system is not democratic, but dictatorial, autocratic. And why are we doing that? Aren't we proud of having struggled for some kind of a more democratic and egalitarian system for a long time? There is tremendous discrimination in the system. Asians, in case you didn't know, I'll now let you know, and Sam will tell me I'm right. Asians are innately superior. We stupid Europeans can just forget about ourselves. We'll never be enlightened. Just ask any Asian, they know, because you have to be Asian to have wisdom, So there's tremendous racial discrimination, and do not kid yourself. Do not kid yourself. In one of the big teachings in India, I was sitting next to a woman who was living in Taiwan. She spoke fluent Chinese. She could write in Chinese. She was in my dorm, and she would come home after the teachings at night. Those were teachings requested by the Taiwanese with a big group of Taiwanese. She would come home at night crying, saying, they won't give me the handouts because they say you can't be knowing Chinese. She said, I asked the one lady next to me in fluent Cantonese, will you please borrow me a pen? And she was just like, and wouldn't give me a pen. Buddhists, we're here to serve all sentient beings. Oh no, you can't have the class handouts and a pen, And she received very derogatory marks from the Taiwanese around her, right? So do not kid yourself. Asians are, whether be it Indians or Tibetans, fiercely racist against Europeans or other races. And you don't notice it until at a Dharma center where there's a Tibetan guru and European monks and nuns, in walks the one Asian person to be ordained. Whoop! Suddenly they get to live at the temple for free while everybody else has to work at the supermarket to pay their rent, right? I mean, do not kid yourself. So there's discrimination based on race and sexism up the wazoo. And this horrible double bind that breaks so many women in Buddhism of hating women, telling you you're inferior, exploiting you sexually, and then throwing you out. So it's like, you're not good enough, but I want to sleep with you, but then you get kicked back out. And just, I am repeating this until you have spread it to at least 100 more women, because I need women to be warned. I have seen a minimum of 100 women walk into this trap. Every single one of them felt like, oh, I'm the chosen one. You know, this Tibetan guy suddenly wants to be with me, you know. So what? Your culture doesn't have cool men? What's the problem? So, the point is, get a real relationship with a real approachable human person who can teach you the Dharma, where you don't have to fake things, distort yourself, go to bed with them, and all the rest. Just an ordinary relationship, which you don't want because it's ordinary. Ordinary means sane and healthy. Instead, we want glitz because it seems so much more exciting. We have our own wisdom and our culture. It's sociological and psychological research. Read a little bit on what is a good relationship versus a bad one, and they will tell you that the ordinary ones that seem boring and that are not glitzy are the good and healthy ones. So try to find somebody like that to teach you the Dharma. The relationship should be based on mutual trust and mutual honesty. Not just you trust them blindly, mutual, right? Or even knowledge. Like, does your Lama know your profession? You know, it's a good question. Do they even know who you are and what you're doing? How are they going to guide you if they don't know your profession? I mean, that comes to another really weird thing. I have to jump here now. Like, I mean, the point I want to jump to is the one like, be realistic. I mean, how many, literally thousands of times have I seen Westerners go for relationship and sexual advice to Asian celibate men raised in a monastery? Do you understand that that's like me going for advice on how to raise my pigs to the jeweler of the Queen of England? It's like, there's no relationship. It's like, how is a jeweler supposed to know how to raise a pig? How is a celibate monk supposed to know how to negotiate a sexual relationship? And you know, the amazing thing is that then they say the thing like, oh, be tolerant with one another, right? And then people come out and they're like, well, this is so amazing. The Lama said we should be tolerant with one another. And I'm like, yeah, you couldn't have said something more general and unspecific and, you know, unrelated to the actual topic at hand. I mean, be tolerant with anybody at all times, right? So this is what I mean, like, can we please stop being so naive and gaga about things? And then the other thing is, like, I've seen literally nuns go in to ask Tibetan Buddhist lamas who've been ordained as monks in a monastery in a community with men only since they were 4 or 5 years old, to ask them about their compulsive masturbation. And I'm like, do you even think that's appropriate? Isn't that also exhibitionistic? You know, it's like in graphic detail. I'm just like, oh my God. And anyhow, so can we please be realistic and think like, okay, here is a person with, they didn't grow up in a family. for the most part, they grew up without a family, without siblings. They have no real experience of mother and father very often, family relationships, sexual relationship, being pregnant, having kids, all of that. But that's where everybody runs to get the advice from. This is where I want to say, like, what is wrong with us? We have university degrees. Where is the discriminating wisdom? Again, what about you think that every person who walks around in Germany knows how to fix your Mercedes-Benz? No. So for those kind of questions, I really recommend going to see a therapist. You don't need to go see me. Go see some other therapist. Plus, I don't like questions on compulsory masturbation anyways. So I'm not kidding. This is, true stories, right? So, and then also you have to understand that to have a good, true relationship with a guru, somebody supposed to lead you to enlightenment, it should be healthy. That means it will take time from both sides, grow slowly, and require some real bonding, and will play out slowly only. That makes sense. So, now the question is, what if you grow disenchanted? So it really didn't work out. You walked in with great relationship problems and sexual problems. You asked that incredibly wise Tibetan guy with his shaved head and his red robe about how you should masturbate to get 3 successes orgasms. And he gave you this amazing answer that you're supposed to think of the emptiness of it or whatever. And ultimately, though, somehow you didn't get the attention you wanted and you grow disenchanted. I'm really being sarcastic, okay? Again, true story. My example was true story. So according to the scripture, if something weird happens, it's okay to go and ask for clarification, to say, dear so-and-so, why did you say this and that? Or why wasn't I allowed to be in the greeting committee? Or why, whatever, just have a normal conversation with them. The scriptures recommend Asian style that you stay respectful and polite. We can also say it is a good idea to continue to talk like a grown-up, like an adult, right? You don't need to scream and curse. Then the scriptures seem to say that try to be diplomatic. Don't make a huge fuss, because that is not, disclosing scandals isn't part of Asian culture. Asian culture is to, sweep everything under the rug and cover up. I do not agree with that part, and that's, for me personally, my impression, the juncture at which we are now as Western Buddhists is like we have to make up our minds how to handle the abuse, dysfunction, culture crash, and the scandals in a diplomatic way, and that we shouldn't be engaged in the massive cover-ups. We shouldn't support those. But instead, we should make them public, but in a way that's still respectful, for a better way of wording it. Like when, for instance, Ronan Farrow, he disclosed all the things about Harvey Weinstein. He didn't say, that sloppy pig, what did he do to women? He was very factual and always calling him Harvey Weinstein in a very respectful manner. So don't make a huge fuss. Why? Because it may not be ultimately good karma to you. And also because it helps you to keep what you saw as good untarnished in the dance of projection, because that will still be part of the story of your mind stream relating to somebody as the image onto which you projected and experienced guru. You know, that person for some time was the outer basis for your experience of guru-ness, right? So you don't need to destroy all of it. So if you can salvage the part that's salvageable, then try to salvage it. So then you just fade away and you honor the good and you drop the bad. That's what I talked about. And that was a very political talk. So on the mystical side, the whole idea, so I also asked myself, what's the mystical value of guru devotion? So in the goal of Buddhism and probably all mystical traditions worldwide is to drop your ego, to transcend the limited experience of yourself as a limited person, to transcend into a more all oneness kind of experience. And the devotional feelings help. They're a vehicle that transports that tendency of merging. And the moment we merge with something else, we become larger than just our own selves, right? We become larger than ourselves. So if you can find something that can be the basis of your guru devotion in a small or in a big way, that can help you in any way to expand your sense of self, that is not egotistical, that's not narcissistic, like I'm the greatest king, but that is in this mystical sense of letting go into the all oneness. That is the positive aspect of guru devotion. That's in my understanding what is really was supposed to be, that you're taking something out there to work on the projective dance. So we can talk about projection. So in the highest schools of emptiness within Tibetan Buddhism, they say that the guru is a mere projection of the mind labeled upon a suitable base on the outside. Suitable base is defined as something that serves as such. So you're supposed to at least, choose something as your guru that can perform the function of a guru. And for all good purposes, it can be a tree. If you can venerate a tree in a way that it gives you a blessing, you get enlightened, more power to the tree. We have such a tree in the universe. I'm not kidding. It's the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, the Buddha sat under, and everybody's just sitting there trying to get enlightened by the power of that tree. So the whole point is like to expand your sense of self and your experience of yourself. And if you can't gently ease into that by the power of your prayers and practice, understanding, visualization, and such, your guru, according to the scripture, has to smash your ego. The guru's job is not to make you feel cozy or to be symbiotic or to beef up your ego, but to smash your ego. So one of the lamas, I forgot his name now, he said, my job is to be the assassin. Like come in with a hit job, assassinate your ego and rush back out and leave you there bleeding to death. That is actually true, but this is not why people want to be close to the guru, because most of us have such wounded, young, early, like baby selves. We want somebody to go, oh, cute little baby, you're so sweet, find yourself a beautiful lover and partner, build a nice family, go do therapy to have this taken care of. The scriptures say the guru is supposed to kill your ego. If you don't dismantle yourself, he or she is supposed to give your ego a big blow. And Lauren, you're studying Tibetan? Is that why you asked about a Tibetan word the other day? Not
Did
really.
I ask about Tibetan? I just started to study it, but I don't think I asked anything about it today.
Yeah. So the Tibetan word for I is nga.
Yeah.
And the ego, the word for ego is ngao. It's like the exaggerated sense of self, you know? So that's supposed to be dismantled. And another very nice sentence that I heard, I believe it's again Chögyam Trungpa who said that, or one of his sons who's also Rinpoche said, the guru is not there to help you. The guru is there to help you help yourself. And then if that happens, and the guru has showed you the path and say, here, you can do it yourself now, then we get angry. We're like, hey, wait a minute. I gave you all these offerings so you would hold my hand like a baby for the rest of my life. So we make a very profound mistake about understanding the function of the guru-student relationship. The guru must cut you loose and throw you in the deep end of the swimming pool at a certain point. It's in the scripture, you know, it's demandatory. So don't get angry if that happens. I mean, I'm not talking about it being in an abusive way, but it's like, yes. And of course, a good guru is supposed to gauge and know like what the student can take and things like that. And know when they're ready to take that blow and for that to really have the effect I'm talking about. That's a skillful guru. Good. That's been 2 hours, and I think that's all I wanted to say about it right now. Do you have any questions? Yeah, Lauren.
I feel like you've talked about it, but I still am maybe working through it like internally, trying to understand more clearly. I think it has maybe to do with the like understanding the role of the guru and the true guru, so to speak, maybe like inner guru, outer guru, like, but also I'm thinking a lot, the reason I'm bringing this forward is for context. I'm thinking about the difference between devotion and attachment. Always thinking about that. And I wonder if you might say something more directly about it.
So if you truly, we haven't reached there, but if you truly understand devotion, it goes with a deep understanding of, it's always the same, refuge, bodhicitta, and emptiness, right? And renunciation, actually. So you're devoting fully with a complete sense of renunciation. That's like letting go. You're devoting yourself completely with a complete motivation of compassion for all sentient beings. So then how can you be possessive of that relationship if the purpose you're having it in the first place is to turn around and help everybody else? You would want all these people to benefit from the guru's attention as well. Third is with a profound, correct, powerful understanding of emptiness applied to the guru. So how are you going to be grasping, possessive, and all this of the relationship if that thing, your object, you understand it to be empty in the nature of an illusion? I mean, in my understanding, almost all of the problems of people relating to Buddhism or life could be solved if they had a really solid, I'm not seeing emptiness directly, but just even a solid understanding of emptiness. It would just be solved. So, like an illusion, and then there are many examples given for that. It's like the echo coming back to you when you call into a gorge, right? Hello, hello. It's like it comes back to you. Echo, echo. So it's like if you think of your guru like that, it's much harder to be so hung up on things. Or the other example that's given is like a rainbow, I don't know if you've ever seriously tried to go to where the rainbow touches the ground, because that's where the pot of jewels is, according to Irish. Like, the more you go, the more it recedes, and it's ever evasive, and you can't ever touch or grab a rainbow. So your gurus like that, your visualization of all the objects of refuge and all the gurus, it's all in that nature. And if people would really see it like that, it would prevent a lot of suffering and accidents, It's all a lot more ephemeral. See, you're a poetess. Just make everything ephemeral, It's not materialistic. It's not Star Wars. The laser comes down, boom, boom, It's not like that. It's very ephemeral, like a rainbow, It was just there and now it's gone again and left no trace. It didn't make a sound. You couldn't grab it. So I don't know if that answer is helpful. Okay, good. Any other questions? Good. So that was my talk on Guru devotion. I'm sorry that not more people were here, but it's always like that when I say what I think is the most important things, the fewest people are listening. I'm not really sure why that is, but I think it's a very hot topic. And if you're just going into it with a little bit more wisdom and trusting yourself and your perception, and even asking yourself, what's my perception? Is that person even interested in me? What kind of a regard? Do they look down on me? Do they seem bored? Do they seem compassionate? Are they even listening? It would be very interesting. I was once really taken aback in Dharma teaching, modern day. And it was in France, so there was always time lapse for translation. And while the translators were translating what the Lama had said, he'd be checking his phone the whole time. I was like, you're not taking me seriously as a student here. It's like, man, if you have that little time that you need to be on your phone. I mean, I'm talking, we were there, I think, for a whole week, 6 hours a day, So basically, I watched him 3 hours a day doing text messages on his phone. I was like, you have a very famous name, but I don't think you are the kind of guru I can study with. This is not working for me. I bring a different kind of an attitude to this. And if I have to sit there half of the time not understanding what's being said, I will sit here with dignity half of the time, not knowing what's being said, but I'm not going to watch you fiddle around on your phone. So allow yourself that piece of saying, I don't like the way you just looked at the behind of that lady. I'm trying to talk to you about something that's important to me, and maybe you're not the right person to talk, So basically, a lot of times I'm a psychotherapist. People ask me, how do I find a good therapist for myself? This is just coming to me now. I always say to them, like, look, if you don't think that person is empathetic towards you, if you don't feel liked or loved, there's not even a point, There's not even a point of starting a therapeutic relationship. I'm not talking about sexual love. I'm talking about love from human to human. And I think it's pretty much the same with the guru relationship. Is if you don't think they're even bothering to see you, listen, and give you love from human to human, you're wasting your time. My opinion. You apply your discriminative wisdom. Good. Okay, so then that's it. And Sam, did you ask for the transmission again? Okay, good. So yeah, she had somehow missed it. So I'm just gonna repeat the refuge formula for her, okay? So you can log out, Laren. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much. Super grateful.
Good.